Please note, this podcast may contain bad language and content that some listeners may find offensive. Welcome to the Seesaw Podcast with T and Cleaves.
Each week offering up a blurry perspective on life. Okay, welcome to Seesaw. Cleaves, just for you, just so everyone knows, we start on saying, give it a couple of seconds, Cleaves, and then come in and introduce. And then it was literally like 5 or 6 seconds, and I was just sitting here waiting for him. I don't know if he was checking his phone, but he just waiting for him to come in. I mean, we never pretended this was going to be a professional thing.
Oh, is this literally starting now? I didn't know whether it was still like an outtakes mode at this point.
No.
Oh, we're just going from this point. Okay,
we're going
fine.
from this point.
Well, in that case, can we lob in like not viewer discretion, hearer discretion advised. You may hear some bad language, but you won't be seeing it.
I don't think anyone sees bad language.
They do. They can see it rolling off the lips. If you're a person that is deaf, then you're going to see bad language. Lip reading.
Well, being deaf isn't something I have to deal with.
Well, so fuck them.
That's been cut. Okay, so
I already gave the disclaimer, so it's good.
More about just,
say what you want.
It was more about insulting the entire community of the deaf.
Well, they're not going to hear it. It's fine.
Oh, God. This week, I haven't got any catch-up to do, because even though it is definitely 100% being a week, don't believe anything you heard in the last episode about it being recorded straight after.
I was going to cut that part.
Well, you have to cut this part as well.
This blooper reel is going to be longer than the podcast itself.
Yeah, but that's fine.
Okay.
If it sounds good, it sounds good.
Well, what have you been doing in this last week?
In this last week...
How's work been? How's work for you?
Work's fine. Work's fine. On the microphones, work is absolutely fine.
Great, good catch up. Oh, yeah, of course. You don't want to...
Yeah,
you're normally so complimentary towards it.
That's not for their ears.
Hey,
that's a different
listener discretion was advised.
It was. But I'm just very concerned I might generate an all-staff and send this out. So I enjoy my time where I work.
Sorry.
Which I'm not disclosing where that is. Because luckily, even though we both have regional accents, or at least in the definition of we're from different areas of Great Britain, you don't know where we are. Which is...
Nottingham.
Now he's blown. Oh, that he means Derbyshire.
It's not like that's even that far away.
I know, I could have picked somewhere much farther away. So...
I thought you were going to ask me about what I've done this week. Turns out, not a lot. Screw you.
I was getting to that. I was going to just crack on. I thought maybe...
Hey, maybe we should talk about the house saga. No one's bought my house yet. Maybe I should have told him exactly where I live.
Maybe. I mean, you did have a couple of voicemails between recordings in the last week, of course.
Yeah, that's true. But that was mainly from estate agents asking me what I thought of other places that I'd looked at.
Which isn't exactly helpful at the moment.
No, not really.
Well, not until you sell your place.
No.
You better believe when you get your new place, you're going to be soundproofing a room.
Yep, no doubt. When lockdown's over, when we're back, we can all do this in the same room. It'd be great. All right.
So,
on to business.
On to business, and a good transition from lockdown. So not to date the podcast, but it is being released in 2020. Which I think we're all very...
Is this what we're doing now? Is this a bit where you go, well, we're not going to disclose where we're from, Nottingham, not to date the podcast, 2020?
You said Nottingham. 2020 hasn't been a great year for many reasons.
Been great for me.
Okay, it's been great for Cleaves, but he is an anomaly in many ways. What we have sort of for a topic is we were going to talk about sport, and mainly sort of disabled sport.
Topic of the week.
Mate, regular sport's been affected by lockdown.
Yes, regular sport has been, but of course, disabled sport is always going to take a hit as well.
Most disabled people have already taken one.
Yeah, it's been tough. It's been tough. Of course, we were supposed to have the Olympics and Paralympics this year.
Yeah, gone.
Supposed to be rescheduled to next year. Whether that happens or not, we'd like to hope so, but there's no idea. No one has any idea at this point in time.
On a brighter note, they did actually manage to finish the Six Nations rugby.
They did.
Like 8 months after it started or whatever it was.
Yeah. So with all the sports being cancelled, only just starting up, disabled sport, I think, needless to say, is ludicrously underfunded. Of course, because you can't market it. There's good reasons why it doesn't get funding. Not fair reasons, of course, but needless to say, Cleaves, you haven't done a lot of disabled sport, have you?
Don't want to. Here's why. I feel like it's just sport.
For disabled people?
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, they just couldn't quite make it into regular sport, which I appreciate that's because of their disability. But then there's a lot of people that can't make it into regular sport and they're not disabled. Should they be able to have a go at disabled sport?
No.
Basically, what I'm saying is some people just aren't very good at sport, right? Should they be able to have a go at disabled sport because they think it might be, quote, easier?
Again, I'm going to say no.
Okay, so what about blind cricket, right? Can't just regular people play that and they put the goggles on?
Yes, and they do. But you never said that was going to be the case, and that's not transferable to all disabled sports.
So what I'm saying is, if someone non-disabled that just isn't very good at regular sport wants to be given some sort of, what's the opposite to aid? Unaid, to make them disabled, to match them with other disabled people, that's cool.
Yes, I think that's absolutely fine, as long as it's not in a competitive environment, not a major competitive environment. So I'm talking about Paralympics. And so, even
See, I don't think that's fine. I think you should be disabled and therefore be able to do disabled sport. And if you're not disabled, work hard and practice, and maybe you can get into the regular ones.
True, but there are some disabled, disability exclusive sports which non-disabled people play.
Like?
Goalden is an example.
Do you have to be disabled to play that?
Well, no, you don't, but they have to wear, goggles the same as everyone.
Can you play it without goggles? That's what I guess I'm asking.
No.
Why not?
Because of various reasons, some down to historical cheating. Regardless of your sight level, you could have no sight, you could have no eyes.
No, what I'm saying is, can't just two teams of fully sighted people play goalball and not wear any kind of eye-inhibiting goggles?
But that's called bench ball.
Well, whatever then. Why give it a different name? It's still the same sport, isn't it?
I'm if I'm Googling it, I don't know which came first, bench ball or goalball. But I would say that goalball probably precedes bench ball.
Based on what?
Goalball's been around ages.
You could have just gone, I guess.
It's speculation, isn't it?
Well, I suppose. You know, that sometimes I feel like we should have Googled a few things before we came into this.
Well,
do you know what? We'll Google them at the end and then we'll just do it in an afterword.
Okay.
That seems fair.
That seems fair, if we remember.
We probably won't.
No, probably won't. But you can Google.
Oh, why is it down to me?
No, I don't mean you, I mean the listeners.
Oh, okay, yeah, fine.
You can Google and then contact us via social media on how wrong we were.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I love scathing reviews. That's a good thing, actually, because we're doing a disability-based podcast. It's now frowned on societally to slander us. So they all have to be good reviews. You don't want to be the guy that slags off a disabled person? No? Well, you probably can do it now because it's, anonymous in it. But even then, can people do that?
I mean, they can. Should they do it?
It's discriminatory, isn't it?
Well, I suppose so.
Well, actually, it's not discriminatory. It's only discriminatory if you're slagging them off for being disabled, not for being shit at their sport.
So what we're saying is You can slag off Cleaves saying that he's shit as a co-host of this podcast.
That's absolutely fine. But not because I'm disabled, all right?
I mean, that's fair. So address all your emails and tweets to Cleaves about how shit he is.
All right, back to goalball. Go on.
So,
what is goalball? I never even played it.
The year 1946. After giving that pesky Hitler a knuckle sandwich, visually impaired and blind veterans look for a rehabilitation option. The answer? Goalball. A Paralympic sport since 1976. 2 teams of 3 face off on a 12-by-9 court. With all players blindfolded, they have to rely on court markings and an audible ball to succeed in scoring against their opponents. The first to reach a 10-goal lead, or the best of 2 rounds of 12 minutes, is the winner. But watch out, this ball can travel up to 60 kilometers an hour and is made of hard rubber. A dangerous sport for any wanting to get involved.
So goalball is a blind sport where you wear blackout shades regardless of what your sight level is. So
everyone's fully, like, they level the playing field, basically.
Yes, and like I was alluding to before, like, even if you have no eyes, you still have to wear the goggles. But everyone has to be even. Like, everyone has to be even. And you have 2 teams of 3. They're around 8 meters apart, and there's a goal behind each of them, each team.
Okay.
A long goal.
Right.
Like 4 or 5 meters long. And you have a ball, quite a heavy ball, to be honest, around the size of a basketball, that has bells in it. And it's not the same material as a basketball as well. It's like quite sort of faux leathery. And the aim of it is to, with markings on the floor so you can line yourself up, is to score goals at the opposing end by throwing it underarm.
How do you know the markings on the floor? Are they scored into the floor?
It's usually on with tape, like masking tape and string.
So you can sort of, get it with your feet or whatever.
You can sort of like get a feel for it. If you've never seen professional goalball, like Paralympics, it's something to behold. You wouldn't think that these individuals had no sight because of the fact they're wearing the goggles. The way they move around and the communication is incredible. Like how they do it. Like there's a huge difference between professional and sort of amateur level. I've only done it amateur.
Well, here's my thing. If I watch a sport with blind people, I'm not going to lie. Perhaps this is the scumbag in me. Partly I'm watching it just to see whether anyone gets hit by a ball and doesn't see it or runs into someone. Well, and what I'm saying is, not only am I watching it for the sport, part of me is hoping for a little bit of a comedy moment.
But you can do that because you are disabled.
Yeah, but other people can do it as well. They just watch it in their own home. They're just not allowed to say in public that it's hilarious.
I mean, yes. Yeah, I'll agree with that. I don't know why I'm agreeing with you. A lot of the stuff you say is horrible. And take it from me, if you get hit with that ball in the face...
I thought you were quite used to being hit in the face by balls.
Well, yeah, but I don't know what it is.
That's when goalball practice is.
Yes, it is when that is. But it is not a pleasant experience. Like busted lip, busted nose. It's quite painful.
Have you ever run into someone else? I'm asking the core questions that people might want to know.
No, because at amateur level, you're usually sort of squatting down and you keep yourself to your area.
Right.
At the professional level, they do sort of mix and match, and the way they move, they move around their half the court, like very fluidly.
Right. So are they basically on the hands and knees for most of the time?
At the amateur level, yeah.
Right.
But not the professional. Like they move like using spatial awareness and communication. They're incredibly good at it.
Are they allowed any sort of like bat sensors? Like spatial awareness, like a little bleeper or whatever when you're near someone?
No.
Right, so there's no tech involved.
No.
Who's like traditionally good at goalball when it comes to the Paralympians? Is there like certain teams? Like Brazil is notoriously good at football. Are there any like notoriously good goalball countries?
I couldn't say. I do have friends who have being captain of the GB team. I know Great Britain are quite good.
Yes.
And I know some former captains, and at some point we might get Richards, especially on the line, to discuss this if we want to go into this in more detail about his time with goalball and sort of Paralympic level of the game, because it can be quite difficult. Not just the sport, but the lack of funding is quite difficult, even with Paralympics in general. There is no funding. Pretty much. You don't have to look very far to see the horror stories of...
I can't.
But there are horror stories out there about having to pay for your own plane ticket, pay for your own hotel.
Yeah, but the thing is, you get that even with the women's rugby team.
Oh, yes, and I'm saying that that's also not... That's
at a professional level now.
Exactly. And
there's probably still a lot of work to be done there. I'm not going to say that it's anywhere near like the men's game, but... Do you know what I mean? At least now people are watching the game. It's becoming more popular. People are starting to legitimise it, which is great.
Yeah, and I think that's really good.
But really, the disabled sport is the same.
The disabled sport is the same in regards that. Yeah, I'm not going to say it's not enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Because part of the enjoyment, as I mentioned before, is the potential accidents that may occur that might draw people in, as sadistic as that is. You know what I mean? If you're just watching a standard goalball tournament, you might just be a little bit like, oh, this is all right, it's something a bit new, whatever. But then it's like F1. You watch a race and you think, yeah, it was a good race. But it's always better if there's a crash.
I thought you were going a different direction with that. It's like in some visually impaired F1.
Oh, God. I think that is one sport that blind people should stay away from.
Don't get wrong, blind people trying to start up every sport they possibly can. Blind rugby was almost a thing.
Yeah.
The logistics of that, I don't think they ever really fleshed out. But kudos for going for it. Everything should be accessible. So, sport-wise, I have played sport, disabled sport. Former county cricketer, well, blind cricket, of course. Played for Surrey, which is... They're doing really well now. I don't live in that area anymore, but quite a sort of rags to riches tale. I'm not going to say for any moment that it was my input that brought them to...
Mr. Humble.
I suppose, but I didn't... I would say I'm a hype man more than anything.
Are you you just described yourself as a Bez or a Fat Man Scoop?
Essentially, I am very loud, mediocre.
Wow, you can't just slag off Fat Man Scoop like that. I've seen Fat Man Scoop live, and he has now changed the words Fat Man Scoop Brooklyn Clan to Fat Man Scoop Instagram, just to self-promote.
I mean, that's
a man.
He's genius.
He's moving with the times. The problem is no one cares.
We've gone down the wrong path here.
Anyway, yeah, we should probably go back to... You're the one that brought up the Hive Man thing. You're basically saying that you stood on the sidelines of your team and was
On the sidelines.
Well...
I was actually on the field.
Did you shout Surrey cricket a lot? Were you basically a cheerleader?
Essentially. But I also played.
Right.
But I was hype.
Did you have the pom-poms?
Well, no, it would make catching the ball quite difficult.
Were you the Boss Tone from the Mighty Boss Tones? There's a reference. The guy that just dances all the time. Oh, are you dancing Homer? I'm just going to bring up all the 90s references I can find.
I feel as though we're getting on track with this.
Why aren't there more blind people as mascots?
That's a good one. I mean, as in mascots that are like the person in the suit are blind, or the actual mascot themselves
both
is blind.
Like if you had the Surrey Blinky, for example, and it was just like a three-eyed fish, but on all of the fish, none of the eyes could see, and that could be your mascot for Surrey.
I think the Simpsons might have something to say about that.
Yeah, there's a little bit of copyright infringement.
Fish has nothing to do with Surrey cricket either.
Yeah, but okay, fine, I get that, right? But
if you're in a team with the Lions, it would be a bit confusing for branding.
Yeah, actually, that would be. Well, okay, fine. You get Surrey Lion anyway. Did you have a mascot? It was a mascot suit.
Yeah, we had a lion.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
an actual lion.
Oh, yeah.
Release the lion, we're losing.
I mean, it's Surrey. I wouldn't be surprised if someone does have a lion somewhere.
Yeah, it's true. My zoo in the back garden.
Yes, well, I didn't live in Surrey before we get any emails saying that I'm a snob. I did not live there. Cleaves can attest to the questionable locations I've lived in.
Yeah.
But at the risk of sounding snobbish, we're not going to go over those.
All right, so blind cricket. When you said it was a rags to riches story, and if we were talking about even just to go back to women's rugby for a while, how it's sort of come on in the last few years, why has Surrey all of a sudden done well? Was it literally an influx of money? Is it marketing? Is it results? Do the results come as a result of, if you market a team, then more people are going to want to join it, aren't they? And ultimately, if you've got more people, then you can pick the best from that. But again, if you've got the money, then you can afford the marketing. So where does that start?
Money definitely played a part in it.
Who gave you the money? How did you get that?
So,
do you win money from tournaments?
No.
Oh.
No, there is no prize money, and you don't get paid for being a player. But that's the same with a lot of sports that aren't sort of top level male, or sort of like just in general top level sports like tennis and golf. You don't like. Even though we were a county team, and there are international teams, you don't get paid for that. So funding is a main part of it. Luckily for Surrey, the man who sort of founded the Surrey Visually Impaired Cricket Club, he was already an established sort of chairman of a local cricket club within Surrey County, and had a lot of connections with the county, sort of like the cricket, like Surrey County cricket in general, because he's always been within cricket. That's his job, as well as I think he has an actual like 9 to 5 as well.
That's a way to make a living.
It is a way to make a living, but you can always make more.
Yeah.
Goalden needs to learn about overtime. His name's Gary. He's a nice guy, and he secured funding for Surrey Visually Impaired Cricket, basically to put them under the umbrella of Surrey already had sort of disabled teams that played county-wide. So you had a team that was deaf, you had a team with physical disabilities, a team with learning disabilities, so being on the autistic spectrum. So Surrey have always been quite good in they will allocate the funding to their disabled teams.
Where does that funding come from, though? Is that government?
No, that comes from the actual organisation itself.
So how have they raised that money then? Where's it come from? Sponsorship or? So
it comes from the sponsorship that the main team gets. So Surrey County Cricket are quite a big county side.
Right.
They're a Division 1 side. So they have quite a lot of money. They're sponsored, previously they've been sponsored by the car manufacturer Kia, and like quite big sponsors. So the Kia Oval, where international games are played, the Ashes and stuff like that, is their home ground.
Yeah.
They have money, and they sell a lot of tickets, and they just take a portion of that and they pump it into their disabled teams because they feel it's the right thing to do, and I can't praise them enough for that.
What would you say, though, to a county that doesn't have that kind of notoriety? Like, let's say Nottingham, their cricket side, a lot of the time, they don't even have the people to be able to field a team. How do they draw in people? How do they get the money? How do they get people to want to play?
Unfortunately, reaching the people is difficult. But you've got to break down the barriers that are sometimes self-imposed, but sometimes the barriers are there, and they do stop people from sort of getting involved with sport, disabled sport. I don't think it's a surprise to say that a lot of visually impaired people don't work. They are on benefit, and I'm not going to knock them for that.
I am. I'll say that to a different podcast.
We'll discuss employment at another point. We both have opinions on that. But when you are of a low income, sometimes it's difficult to get to places, and it's not just the financial. finding a new location and transport for someone who has no sight is very difficult. You rely on friends and family, but sometimes that's not possible, not feasible. So if a club has money, they can afford to pay for taxis, carpools, that sort of thing. That really does help.
Would you say that, I use Nottingham as an example because it's true to fill the team, is it dependent on basically one or two people with a lot of passion to help make it happen?
I think it does. You need to have people that are really, really up for it and are willing to put in the extra work, because it can be quite difficult if you don't have someone who's passionate who really wants to go for it, because you have to dig these people up, like for your team.
Yeah.
You have to do that. And you need to make it as easy as possible for them to get involved. Which, again, I've said it comes down to the money of it. Like, if you're going to go and play away, let's say Nottingham were playing Derby,
Yeah.
and you've got a lot of your players in the Nottingham area, it's sometimes too difficult for them to make their own way to the ground.
Yeah, but isn't that when the club or something should maybe look at hiring a minibus?
Yeah, but where's that money come from?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I suppose a lot of the time I think potentially blind people just don't get out and do enough. So maybe if you said, come to cricket practice, it'll be £3. Someone's doing it maybe as a volunteer role, the people we talked about maybe got a lot of passion, but are just trying to get things off the ground in the first place before they start seeing any kind of return from it. And maybe you've got 10 people that turn up, it's £30. I think the likes of Nottingham, I don't know how much it is to hire or whatever, but I'm pretty sure Trent Bridge give them the grounds to practice in. But I don't know whether they charge them for that. But the point is, you come to practice, you pay your money. It's not going to cost a great deal to run the practice if you've got those people that are happy to run it. And then when it comes round to having to go to a different city, then potentially you have the money to hire a minibus to do it.
Yeah, I think if the county club themselves can allow for having a ground, that sort of thing to practice, if they can offset some of the costs of running a sports club through just being nice,
yeah,
I think that really does help. And I think it also lends legitimacy to that club.
Yeah.
Going back to Surrey, there were occasions where we would go to the Oval and do exhibitions and stuff like that. And they didn't have to do that for us, but it lends legitimacy to us as a county club. They also got us on board with their own sponsor for kits.
Okay, yeah.
They would have their sponsors, and I think it was First State Investment was one of the sponsors for one of the seasons I played for. And it wasn't just and I'm not going to knock this because any money is good. So I'm not going to knock low-level sponsorship because you do what you have to do. But when you show up as a club to an away game, say in London, and you're rocking out your minibus that they've been able to afford, and you're all wearing not only just your kit, but you're wearing the jackets as well, and you've got Kia on them, or you've got First State Investment, and you've got names printed on the back and stuff like that. And someone's car alarm's going on. Fantastic.
Push on through.
But when you have that, it does lend legitimacy, and especially from local clubs to Surrey, you have Hampshire and you have London and Berkshire. They poached a fair amount of players because they just looked more legitimate. The amount of London players that were poached.
Are you essentially saying fake it till you make it?
No, because there were still really good players for Surrey.
Yeah.
But when you have a certain degree of ability and you are succeeding and you look the parts,
yeah,
and you've obviously got the funding to pay for that taxi from the train station to your ground for training and stuff like that, and you'll make up that cost for the players. When you have that, it's much more appealing than, for example, if you have a team rock off of the bus and they're wearing sort of their self-printed shirt. And they might all be the same colour, and they might have a sponsor, and it might be, I don't know, John and Jesse's Donut Company, and it might just be just a high street brand who's given them £500 to get their kit printed.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm not going to knock that because it's good for the sport.
Are you saying that though? Well, I imagine some teams are going to not even have that, are they? They're just going to literally turn up in whatever they've got.
Usually it wasn't too bad.
Okay.
The worst I saw of it was teams that were sharp and they'd have their T-shirt, like their polo shirts.
Yeah.
And they'd be wearing mismatched sort of trousers.
Okay.
And they would just wear their own baseball caps. It was just sort of like the shirt.
Yeah.
Whereas Surrey, we had shorts, we had trousers, we had sort of shell jackets, hats, training tops, playing tops. Like we had everything.
Would you say that then, if they look and feel professional, that they're more likely to perform on the field?
I think so. I think that is a part of it. When you've got that confidence because you know that some, like, the higher ups have put the confidence in you.
Yeah.
Like, they are putting their money out because they see success in you. And when I was playing, it was always just about having fun, but you always wanted to win.
Yeah.
And when you rock up and you are in your kit and like you're looking great and you're feeling good and you've got good training facilities and batting nets and stuff like that, and then you show up and the team you're against have got mismatched kit and they've only trained twice in the last 2 months because
You're already thinking, we got these.
Yeah.
And I think conversely for those guys, you're thinking, crap, these guys are the real deal.
Yeah, but there wasn't a lot of money. Like, it doesn't cost a lot.
Mm.
And when you're talking about county level, a lot of the teams that do compete do have they're sort of like full-sighted men's and women's counterparts.
Yeah.
They're not showing up in mismatched kits.
Mm.
But even Nottingham as a team, they struggle to get the numbers. And I don't know the ins and outs of them. I played against them once years ago when they were established. But they're not a bad team. They had some ability, they had some talent to them. But then you wonder, why isn't Nottingham County Cricket throwing more money behind them to help them and sort of bringing them in under the umbrella of, we recognise these guys as being our disabled or visually impaired team for the county. That's what Surrey did.
Mm.
They're like, this is our county visually impaired team. Whereas other counties, sometimes they don't do that. Sometimes they don't acknowledge them at all. And Nottingham, it's not as though that they don't have money.
Well, the problem now is that no sports team has any money.
No.
COVID has annihilated both men's and women's games of every sport, for the fully sighted, for the non-disabled, for the normies, which has an even bigger effect on disabled sport.
Yeah, I agree.
So if the normal men's and women's teams of any sport, it just has like a trickle down effect, doesn't it? Essentially, especially if they're donating a portion of what they're making to help and fund disabled teams, then that's going to be cut, isn't it?
Yeah.
You always cut the stuff that unfortunately can afford to be dropped, and handouts are usually one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, and I think that's just an unfortunate side effect of how the world is at the moment.
Maybe on that we should leave it and talk about next week's episode, which is a surprise.
Next week is a surprise, of course.
If you have any comments about this week's episode, please feel free to contact us on the social media platforms that we will have available.
We'll put them in the show notes when these are actually put up. If you look in the show notes, we will have our Twitter, Facebook, and our email address if you do want to get in contact. We do want to hear from people, able-bodied, and disabled, about the things we've spoken about, because I think that's what we want to go for, is a bit more of a candid. Can they say that?
Yeah, it was a bit deeper this week, I think.
Yeah, I think that's we are going to dip our toe into that sort of thing now and again. Not always super serious, but I think we want to discuss things that maybe people are afraid to say.
Yeah.
And talk about, and you really shouldn't be. Yeah, we're all human at the end of the day. We're all flesh and bone, and we're all rot in the ground when we're dead.
Wow.
Yeah, we're all in the equal playing field at the beginning and the end. But the journey in the middle shouldn't have so many boundaries there.
That's
especially if we're making the boundaries.
Cool.
No,
On that
awesome.
note, I'm good to go, mate.
Cool.
I'll catch you in a bit.
Catch you in a bit.